Welcome, family, back to another episode of Brainwashed on Heavy. I am your brother, Ani, and today's discussion, we're going to talk about the relationship that we have with nature that's out of order. A lot of people say, why is the world in such a state of disarray? And will things get better? And what can we do to create the reality that we want that's more positive and, more abundant? And I have to tell brothers and sisters all the time that, creation itself is perfect in its design. We just have a bad relationship with nature. And the reason why we are getting the results that we're getting in this day and time is because we have taken ourselves out of the proper context of how nature operates, and we're operating on a man-made or another person's perspective on how life should operate. And this is why we're constantly having challenges throughout our lives, whether it be relationships, financial, or, health issues, because we as original people have subscribed to a reality that is not conducive to creating the type of results that we want. And we're constantly pointing the finger, but it's not solely about pointing the finger. It's actually about taking responsibility for your own view of the phenomenal universe. And once you do that, the universe will conform to your new perspective on how you see it and start to rearrange things to produce the results that you want. Take, for instance, we went through a lot with this slavery thing. And through that whole process of us going through that, we still have this post-slavery trauma. And keep in mind, all of us were not slaves. A portion of us were kidnapped. We have to make that known, because the way they're teaching our children and have been teaching our children for X amount of hundreds of years is that when we revert back to our history, we only pick up at a certain time in history where we only remember slavery. You ask the average person of color, what were we doing prior to slavery? We draw a blank. It's almost like that portion of our history is void. We have a form of amnesia. We can't even remember what we were doing post slavery, but we were here. And this is done very strategically because they've programmed us to go back to a certain point that they're going to keep us in a certain block of time where they have to rehash this slavery thing and this whole Civil War thing and civil rights thing. And they keep us stuck in that time frame. And this is why it's very important for us to teach our children about their ancient history, because our ancient history puts us in our proper perspective on how we fit in to the universal schematic of things. And they don't want to really discuss that or give us a platform, especially in the educational system, where our children are getting this type of history lesson, because now it puts the let's just say the oppressor in a position where now they're questionable. Even their own existence is questionable. And they really don't want to open up Pandora's box on that aspect of things. So they have to keep us in a block of time that we're running on a loop of slavery up until this point, slavery up until this point. And they have to keep that going to keep this whole thing up. But just to dig deeper into our relationship with things, how we can change things, we basically need to start changing our minds. And I know that sounds a little bit quite simple, but changing our minds is something that's so powerful that had we been taught properly how to utilize this science, we can change our reality. Because we subscribe to a lot of things that are purposely programmed into our subconscious mind to produce the reality that we see today. And this is why it's so important for us to learn about the levels of consciousness as well as the subconscious mind and this waking reality. We really need to get into the science of mind, because once you get back into the science of mind, you'll be better equipped to deal with any bombardment or mind control program that they want to run on your operating systems. And you'll be your let's just say your antivirus software will be running at a higher pace, where it'd be able to pick up certain things and keep certain things out of downloading on your system, so you won't be subjected to these realities that they want to produce a particular result that's not in our favor. And I'm gonna give you a simple example. That, take for instance, when we consistently subscribe to this thing of slavery, it breeds a certain unconscious impression. Even though we have unconscious impressions through the fact that we've been through certain traumas, we have unconscious impressions. And this is why we respond to certain situations now and don't really fully understand the science on why we respond to certain things. But those unconscious impressions are installed on our hard drive, and it's sending these pop-ups consistently. And these pop-ups manifest in the form of, when let's just say you're sitting on your front porch and some white folks show up. They just roll up. Automatically, we have a fear mechanism that kicks in when we see these people. Not that they have any power over us or anything of such, but it's so much ingrained in our subconscious mind that we automatically have our spider senses go off or get into a survival mode when they show up. It's kind of like police officers. When they show up, we get this certain reaction, whether we're doing anything bad or not. We get this certain reaction when they show up. And it's just a matter of a program operating on our system that we have to change our minds. And that's a process to clear out all that debris that has been bred into us. And we actually have to breed it out. This is why it's important for us to teach our children their proper ancient history, not just history, but ancient history, so we can kind of instill in the next generation that's coming up a more well-balanced view of themselves cosmically, not just this thing of us coming to America and going through this whole plight of slavery. Our science is much deeper than that. Our history is much deeper than that. And once you start instilling these things into your children from an ancient perspective at a very young age, you now have a more advanced program running to breed out the BS that we dealing with today. And that's very important, because if you look at the youth, they're stuck in the now moment. And the now moment is the only time that technically exists, which is now. Tomorrow does not exist. Yesterday does not exist. We're always in a state of right now. And being stuck in the now moment, it is a good thing, because when you're in the now moment and you're aware of the now moment, you have a more grounded view of what's going on in your immediate surroundings. The only thing is, you have to have a holistic view of everything that's going on simultaneously. So you got to be well-rounded from an ancient perspective. You got to be well-rounded from a now perspective. And that puts you more in a more well-rounded future perspective. And they all come together to give you one perspective. And that's why it's very important for us to be able to live in the now moment, have our ancient format down, and that will give us the ability to project futurely how we want to. And all of this is done in the mind. And we have to take back our ability to project what we want consciously, not project things by default, because half of the things we think about from a world's view, we think that they're our own thoughts, and technically they're not. It's running on that spyware that has attached itself to our subconscious mind, and it's producing this particular reality that is not even conducive for us. But we are sustaining the reality. We are creating the reality. And it's not until someone helps you to better see how you are creating this reality that you can change it. And this is done en masse. I'm not talking about a few hundred people. I'm talking about millions of people who are creating a program consciously and manifesting a reality that's not even conducive to their own. And this is what we're dealing with today. So I think what we really need to do is get back into meditation. Meditation is very important. And proper breathing, and slowing things down, and building a better relationship with our higher self, so we can get some answers to some things. Because we've been taught to do a lot of talking and a lot of chatter and a lot of things that are not allowing us to be still enough to listen. And if we listen and trust, then you'll be guided properly. And this is how the spirit world interfaces with us. This is how our ancestor interfaces with us. And this is how, if you want to call it God, this is how it interfaces with us. But we have to slow this now moment down in order for us to receive the messages that we need to receive. And this is where proper meditation and proper breathing comes in, because it helps us get more centered in the moment and listen and trust. And the reason why I say trust is because sometimes it's hard for us to get information and not question it and just move on it. That's a little scary. Most people need definitive proof that what they're going to do is going to work. And sometimes you have to let go and let the God self take control. And I know that's not easy because of fear. But this is something that we have to start conditioning ourselves to get into a mindset of being able to let go, listen, and trust, and have some faith. And I'm going to use the word faith, because faith is something that not just pertains to religion, but faith is something that, you have to utilize to help condition your subconscious mind to get more in tune with that sense of whatever it is that is communicating with you. That once you get familiar with letting go and letting it take control, you become more comfortable in letting it drive the vehicle versus your ego mind wanting to drive the vehicle. And now you'll be getting better results that are more positive and conducive for where you need to be in life versus what you want to be in life, because our needs and our wants are two separate things, and a lot of people are operating off the fact that they want a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that you need it. Certain things are very conducive for our growth and our spiritual evolution. And that's where the struggle comes in, because the ego mind is telling us that we need X, Y, and Z, and we're going to structure our waking reality around that need. And that's what we're going to pursue. But we're going to constantly run into roadblocks and different challenges to kind of tell you, look, you're on the wrong track. You're on the wrong track. But that ego personality is going to consistently feed you to pursue and to pursue and to pursue until you get tired and say, hey, let me slow down. Let me quiet things down because I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I'm getting the same results and it's just not where I want to be. And this is where listening comes in, because sometimes I tell people all the time, they explain certain situations, that they keep running into over and over again. And sometimes I tell them, you're not listening. You need to slow things down and listen, because if you're consistently doing X, Y, and Z and getting this particular result and it's undesirable, then you're not listening to the fact that your needs and your wants may be in conflict. And sometimes you just need to let go and listen and see which direction that the higher self sends you in, and have faith that it's making the best decision for you. And once you get comfortable with that process, then life becomes much more easier, because now you don't worry as much. Because every situation, I thought about this the other day. Every situation that you've ever been in life, no matter how bad it was, you always wind up on the other side of the situation, and it always worked itself out, no matter what it was. I mean, if you go back to, when you were 5 or 6 years old up until whatever age you are now, you always found yourself in a pickle, and it's like, how did I get here? Or, I'm gonna give you a good example. Relationships. People get involved in certain relationships and certain things occur. Those things are not always pleasant. You find yourself questioning, how did I get here? Why did I do X, Y, and Z? How am I going to get out of this? Only to make it out of that, look back on it maybe 6 months to a year later and find yourself in a new situation, not realizing that it always works itself out and you find yourself in some new shit. So the bottom line is, sometimes you got to realize that, what? Let me chill out. Let me focus on what it is I need to learn from this, because I know it's going to pass. Instead of me just kind of going through things, creating scenarios for myself, not getting the result that I want, wanting the change, and then getting the change, accepting the change, and moving in a different direction. And that's just something that we have to get used to doing. And all of this is going to facilitate you taking back the control of your mind. The greatest weapon that the controllers have on the face of the planet is media, television, movies. This is the greatest weapon that they have. Without this medium, none of this goes down the way they want it to go down. That's just the bottom line. Because what we see on the television and what we hear and what we read, all of this stuff is programming us to produce a particular reality that is not conducive to your ultimate well-being. By default, we are producing these realities, not realizing that these realities were already planted in our subconscious template, and we're just producing the results of it, unaware that it's going on or operating on our mental computer. So sometimes we have to turn this stuff off and unplug and regroup and get centered so we can get back on track of focusing on, what's going to be the best possible route for me to get in position to produce what I want. And that's very important that we do that. One of the questions that I get often relates to, how would a God create a creation and seems like it's forsaken? Like, how could you have babies, get kidnapped? Or how could you have all this crazy stuff going in the world and there be some compassionate, loving creator somewhere that allows these things to occur? How is that possible? And I have to explain to them that your concept of what the creator is conflicting with your waking reality. And what you need to do is reevaluate your concept of what the creator is. And once you do that, you get a better understanding of this dimension that we're living in. Case in point, when you strip away the godly personalities that man has put on creative forces, given creative forces a personality and a height and a width, and giving it feelings and made it human like. Now you open Pandora's box for people to critique it as a human. When you're talking about creative forces, universal forces and elements don't care about human affairs. The universe does what it does based on how it's supposed to operate and sustain itself and perpetuate. That's it. Man has taken universal forces, personalized it, called it God, made it a he or she, gave it a location, said it has feelings and it gets angry and it does all of these things. And once you do that, you put it in the spectrum of human fault. When you look at creative forces allow us to be. Now it's up to us to do what we need to do with existence. And then you put consciousness in it. Now the creative forces have created a supreme being, which is my state of being. It's supreme in its structure. And I have consciousness, so I can actually ponder or think about or question my very existence. This is why the machine or the computer called the physical body is designed the way it is to facilitate consciousness being able to ponder and question. Take a dog, for instance. You have creative elements or creative forces or universal forces that has created this dog. The only thing is the dog is not pondering on, why am I a dog? Why do I have 4 legs? Why do I sniff another dog's ass? Like, a dog is not pondering on that or questioning his very existence. He's just doing what dogs do. Man and woman, we're different. We're a highly evolved organism with consciousness. And that gives us the ability to question our very existence. And with that being said, creative forces are not involved in human affairs and having some sort of feeling about human affairs. We are actually the consciousness that's operating within creative forces that gives us the ability to question. So, who is God? Or what is God? Based on what I just explained, it's giving you an inkling to the fact that religion has created God outside of man and placed it somewhere and made man turn towards that direction to find it. Our ancestry taught different. The creative forces allowed us to be. Consciousness allows us to operate on our divine mind as a creator or a god. That's why the only place on earth we refer to men and women as gods and goddesses was in Africa. No other place on earth. And I use the term God for the sake of conversation because we did not use the term God. That's actually a German word. But for sake of conversation, we'll use that term. But we are manifest God in flesh. So it's up to us to take on the responsibility of doing what we need to do to add on to creation and have purpose in creation. And in order for you to be able to operate within that spectrum as God, you need a physical body. That's the vessel or the temple. God dwells within the temple. So it's not that God is allowing things that we consider bad to happen on the face of the planet. It's not that. It's the fact that once a person gets back into their divine faculty, then they start to change this reality and make it more conducive to certain things to bring balance back to this dimension. And that's what a divine being does. Being is simply your state. Your divinity is your consciousness. And people have been taught through religion, when you hear words like divine or supreme being, they'll automatically go to something outside of themselves. They don't equate themselves on the level of being a supreme being. Supreme simply means the highest of something. A being is just your state of existence. The highest state of existence is the melanated man and the melanated woman. Supreme beings. Has nothing to do with race. It's just superior it's genetic superiority. That's all it is. When you factor in consciousness, you got God in the flesh. People say, you want to see what God looks like? Look in the mirror. Look in the mirror. And collectively, we make up a body of something that's bigger than ourselves. We are a fractionalized aspect of the bigger aspect of what divinity is. So yes, in your own right, you are God by nature. Collectively, we make up a bigger aspect of that divinity, and that's bigger than self. And it's not outside of self. We collectively make it up. So we are a part of it, and we also operate as an aspect of it. So we're going to wrap it up. But I just wanted to drop that jewel on the fam today. So until then, everybody be safe out there. This is Brother Ani. Peace.